My name is Jennifer. I'm a dedicated housewife who's been married for 20 years. I remarried with my current husband 20 years ago. I was in my first marriage while it was his second, and during our relationship, he confessed that he had a son who was turning 5. I tried to leave several times after that, but in the end, I couldn't part from him and we went ahead and tied the knot. Despite all the struggles, ever since we got married, I have made a point of raising his child as if he were my own. The son was 5 years old when we got married. He did show typical adolescent rebellious behavior, but we never had dramatic exchanges like in the movies where he would yell, "You're not my real mom," or anything of the sort. I believe we built a happy family together. 2 years into our marriage, I became pregnant. We were blessed with a lovely baby boy of our own. Our eldest son, James, was a bit older than his younger brother with a 7-year age gap, but he was still very kind and protective as an older brother. Even though I wasn't his biological mother, I was somewhat apprehensive, but as the old saying goes, better to have the baby than to worry about it. Life has a way of working itself out, as I've come to realize. A few years after, our second son was born. Our eldest son started to enter puberty and began to reject my presence. The trigger was something truly trivial. I wasn't aware of it myself, but our eldest son told me that I treated him and his younger brother differently. I tried to explain to him that wasn't the case, but he wouldn't listen. Our relationship began to break down like a landslide from that point, and now in his eyes, I am just someone who does the chores around the house. Regardless of whether my son recognizes me as his mother or not, I have been determined to be his mother ever since the day I married my husband. Until the day he becomes an adult and leaves this house, I'm committed to take care of him no matter how much he resents it. I decided to commit to this wholeheartedly. As a result, our relationship worsened as he went through puberty and his rebellious stage. Looking back, I probably should have let things slide and not made any comments, but I just couldn't do that at the time. Now, it's become commonplace for him to call me, "Hey you." When I was doing the laundry or cleaning, he would yell at me furiously, "Don't touch my stuff when I didn't ask you to." He did apologize later, probably realizing how out of line he was, but when I forgave him with a smile, he became defiant again, saying, "In the first place, it's your fault for doing things I told you to stop, lady." I knew then that things were getting out of hand. My husband does try to discipline him, but he's well behaved in front of my husband, so my husband ended up doubting me, saying, "Did James really do that?" I tried recording our interactions to prove it to my husband a few times, but it never worked out, as something always came up or we didn't have any arguments when I was recording. As time went on, our eldest son came of age and decided to leave home. I remember breathing a sigh of relief, thinking that I'd finally made it through. His parting words when leaving the house were, "Finally, I don't have to see strangers' faces." I thought those were harsh words for me, who had been taking care of him every day for 15 years since we first met. He's not a bad kid. Even though I understood this intellectually, my heart couldn't catch up. When our eldest son left the house saying those words, our second son, Richard, who was just entering middle school at the time, looked perplexed and asked, "Why does Big Brother hate Mom so much?" So I thought it necessary to tell my younger son the whole truth as well, and told him about remarrying his father and that his older brother was his father's son from a previous marriage. My younger son seemed shocked at first that his older brother and him were not blood related, but he quietly listened to the end of the story. In the end, he seemed to accept it, saying, "So that's why his attitude towards Mom was weird these past few years." I don't regret marrying our husband, but I began to regret claiming to be the mother of our older son. Maybe there was a way to live together as just housemates? Maybe I didn't have to force him to recognize me as his mother? Once I started thinking about it, the thoughts just didn't stop. A few years after our eldest son moved out, we received a message from him saying, "I will be visiting soon for a marriage introduction." The message was relayed through his younger brother. I hadn't received any direct communication, but I was okay with it because I was getting regular updates about him through my husband and younger son. However, with his marriage on the horizon, we had to do the formal introductions and face each other. After meeting with the parents of the bride-to-be, they left. The room felt awkward because we hadn't seen each other for several years, but the conversation moved to whether or not I would attend the wedding. "I don't think of you as my mother. I don't want you to attend the ceremony." "What?" "What are you saying? Jennifer's the one who raised you up to this point." "I don't care, I didn't ask for that. Anyway, you remarried without even asking my opinion, and you're trying to tell me she's my mother? I can't accept that." "James, have you been saying such terrible things to Mom all this time? I trusted you." "I've been pretending all along in front of you. I'm severing my ties with this house. I'm being adopted into my wife's family, so I don't need to grovel to you guys anymore." "Have you really never thought of me as your mother, not even once?" I don't know about when I was a little kid, but certainly not in my memory." "I see. I understand." With my husband, who was looking worried behind me, I left the room. I didn't want to cry in front of my eldest son, but when I left the room, I couldn't cry. What had the past 15 years been for? I remembered my eldest son when he was little, when he used to call me mom and say, "I love you" with a smile. My phone wallpaper was a picture of my eldest son and my younger son when they were small. A picture of my 7-year-old eldest son holding my newborn younger son timidly. If I could go back to that time, I would want to, I thought as I looked at the picture. Those were good times, really. I muttered and decided to leave the house. My younger son is 18, graduating from high school next year, and has mentioned going to a university with dormitories. In effect, I will be relieved of my duties. So I've decided to change my mindset and start enjoying living on my own from now on. That night, I had a talk with my husband about our future, about our eldest son today. "Jennifer, I'm truly sorry I never believed you. I had no idea that our son James could disrespect others in such a way." "No, it's all right now. Perhaps my parenting was also at fault. Even though I thought of him as my own child, I suppose I treated him differently. He told me so himself. I wasn't aware of it myself, but I was taking care of him in my own way." "I know that better than anyone else. You have always taken care of James as if he were your own. I am truly grateful for that." "But it seems that even that was something he didn't want. It's almost laughable, isn't it?" As I made this self-deprecating remark, my husband made a pained face, took my hand, and apologized to me over and over again. Then, I told my husband that I would not attend the ceremony as he wished, and that I wanted a divorce because I would be leaving the house as soon as our second son left. I handed him the divorce papers. "Are you serious?" "Of course, I would never joke about something like this." "You're right, you are that kind of person. I'm truly sorry for all the pain I've caused you." "You don't need to apologize anymore. I have never regretted marrying you, so, okay?" "Jennifer, I love you from the bottom of my heart." I love you too. Please take care of James and Richard for me." That night, I fell asleep in my husband's arms for the first time since we were newlyweds. I was able to sleep soundly for the first time in a long while, comforted by the faint sound of his heartbeat. Several days passed since our discussion about the divorce. Our second son graduated from high school, and our eldest son's wedding is coming up next week. Our second son was wondering if he should wear his school uniform to attend the wedding, which I found amusing. Noticing me smiling at his preparations for the ceremony, he approached me and started a conversation. "Mom, are you really not going to attend my brother's wedding?" "Yes, he said he didn't want me there, so there's nothing I can do about it. It's his big day. I want him to enjoy it." "But Mom, you're the one who raised him with care." "It's okay, Richard. There's no need for you to worry about it." Not convinced by my words, my second son kept groaning in frustration. It must have been frustrating for him. He knows the good relationship I used to have with our eldest son. But repairing the relationship is now impossible. I have prepared to leave the house and the divorce is settled. I didn't ask for any division of the property, kept the money I had, and left the house with our second son. The house that was filled with memories of many years spent there. A house that represents half of my life. I left a video message for my second son and left my family behind. A week after I left home, I heard from my younger son that my eldest son's wedding went off without a hitch. I was relieved and asked my younger son about his impressions of the ceremony. Then he replied, "It was a total disaster, seriously." As I had chosen not to attend the wedding in accordance with my eldest son's wishes, his response took me by surprise, stopping my thoughts for a moment. But I managed to regain my composure and asked him what exactly went wrong. For some reason, he started boasting about it. "You remember, Mom, how you were there when we did the initial meet and greet, right?" "Yeah, I remember." "Well, because you weren't at the ceremony, his wife was all, 'Why?'" "I see, I understand." Big Brother was making all sorts of excuses, but his wife suddenly suggested to cancel the ceremony and her parents went into a frenzy. The ceremony somehow started since everyone was already gathered, but throughout it was a sullen bride and a timid groom. It was quite peculiar atmosphere at the venue. "Is that what happened?" "After the ceremony ended and all the attendees had left, I showed the video message from you, Mom, entrusted to me to my big brother, and then he started crying." "What? He cried?" "Yeah, but seeing that, his wife got even more upset. She said something along the lines of, 'How could you not invite someone who raised you with so much care to the most important event of your life?'" "So, what happened after that?" When I asked, he looked at me uncomfortably and said in a low voice, "They're separated." I was speechless, taken aback by this shocking news. Despite holding back my desire to attend the wedding for the sake of my son, the newlyweds separated shortly after their marriage. In retrospect, I think his wife admired the fact that I raised him as my own, despite having no blood relation. Furthermore, I recall that in the course of our conversation she had said, "I was also raised with great care by my parents, and I would love to build a warm and loving family with your son, just like my parents did." In other words, my son's stubbornness shattered his own happiness. When I heard this, I could hardly think of it as karma, because he cried after watching my video message. If he still has feelings for me, I couldn't be happier. I immediately contacted my husband and asked him about the couple. With a worried voice, my husband asked for my opinion.
I don't know what to do. Now that it has come to this, I don't know what to say to him.
Don't worry, he's good at expressing his feelings clearly to others, but he might need a little push.
A push, huh? Okay, I'll try it.
I don't know what happened after my husband and I talked on the phone, but when my younger son told me with a smile, they've reconciled. I believed everything would be okay from now on. I was resolved to truly leave them alone this time, and then...
Mom.
Why are you here?
There's something I need to talk about.
With me?
Yeah, I'm sorry about what I said during the wedding prep. Watching that video message the other day reminded me. I've always thought of you as my mom, really. And you've always defended me saying I'm your son. I'm really sorry.
I gently extended my hand to my son crying in front of me, wiping away the tears streaming down his cheeks. I was surprised to see an adult man shedding tears, but I thought that these tears must be expressing all of his feelings. He apologized for the harsh words he had thrown at me. That alone was enough for me. I didn't need anything more. Thanks for coming. I got the photos from Richard. You looked great. Your girlfriend, Linda, right? She's a kind and lovely girl. Take good care of her, okay? Make her the happiest bride in the world.
Yeah, I absolutely promise. So, Mom? It might be asking a lot, but could you come back home?
What?
Dad has been down ever since you left. It's like when I lost my birth mother. I can't bear to see it.
Your father?
I'm really begging you.
Hearing my eldest son's words, I decided to go back home. I couldn't believe that he, who told me he loved me, was feeling down like this. Was this a lie told by my eldest son to make me reconcile with his father? I headed home, half doubting, half hoping. When I slowly opened the door and stepped in after a long time, I heard a soft sobbing sound.
Jennifer.
I gently peeked in, and there was my husband, phone in hand, shoulders trembling as he cried. I was taken aback for a moment, but it would be strange not to say anything, so I called out to him, "Robert." His body jolted. He quickly turned towards me. His cheeks were wet with tears reflecting the sunlight, and he quickly wiped his face and tried to act as if nothing was wrong, saying,
What? Is something wrong?
I couldn't help but laugh. You know... If I said I wanted to come back here, would you be angry?
Huh?
His surprised voice was cut off as everything suddenly went dark. It took me a moment to realize that I was enveloped in a warm embrace. As I returned the hug and asked, "Does this mean it's okay?" he repeatedly nodded, saying, Yeah, in a nasal voice. Since then, I reconciled with my husband, and that was the last time I saw him cry. Now, I go on trips with him, have dates, and sometimes go out with my eldest son and his wife, spending my time happily. I owe all this happiness to my daughter-in-law, Linda. I'm truly grateful.
My name is Michelle. I'm a 31-year-old office worker. My husband, John, is 2 years older than me, at the age of 33. We met through a setup, and now we're in our second year of marriage. I was what you'd call a sheltered only child, attending public school like anyone else during my elementary years. But from middle school through college, I attended a private girls' school. There was that characteristic same-sex admiration typical of girls' schools, but I didn't quite understand romantic feelings for men. It was not that I had no desire to get married, but I had only been with a man twice in my early 20s. We parted ways without ever progressing to marriage. I thought, I'll meet the right person eventually, but before I knew it, I was in my 30s. Seeing this, my parents seemed worried. My concerned father finally lost patience and started bringing matchmaking profiles, saying, "It wouldn't hurt just to meet them." One of those men is my current husband, John. After our initial meeting, we saw each other a few times, and he confessed his feelings for me. John is a gentle soul, and he held his parents in high regard. I too cherished my parents, and feeling our values aligned, I thought I could make it work with this man, and so I decided to marry him. After that, our marriage was quickly arranged. Our parents and friends blessed us at our wedding reception, and I was overjoyed. I wished for this happiness to continue forever. However, within a half year of marriage, my father-in-law passed away due to an illness, and John became overly attentive to his mother, who was left alone. John frequently visits my mother-in-law and even goes on trips with her. While he also cherishes me, his mother-in-law always takes precedence when it comes to her. At this point, it seems to me more like he's a mama's boy than simply caring for his mother. It's a little frustrating, but apart from that, there are no major issues, and I resigned myself to the thought that this is what marriage is, and I compromised with my life. Lately, my joy has been entering sweepstakes, winning prizes, and writing reviews or introducing them on my blog. Most of my winnings were cosmetics and food, but one day I won a pair of plane tickets to Miami. This was the first time I'd won such a high-value prize, so of course I was shocked when I got the call. The winning pair of tickets required me to notify the airline in advance of who would be going. I thought to myself, what should I do? It would be really nice to go with John, but John just went on a trip with his mother-in-law recently. Considering that John often travels within his own pocket money, I decided to gift the tickets to my parents this time. I immediately went to my parents' house and told them the news. Guess what? I won a trip to Miami. Why don't you guys go, Mom and Dad? Oh my, when was the last time we had an overseas trip, dear? Hearing my mom's words, she was overjoyed. However, Dad didn't seem as enthusiastic. I have work commitments. Dad, didn't you say you still have some paid leave left? It's a busy season for our industry, and as the department head, I can't really take time off. Michelle, if you can manage to get leave, why don't you and Mom go instead? I see. Well, it's a great opportunity, so why not? Having been turned down by my dad, I decided to broach the topic of leave with my boss the next day. Fortunately, it was a quiet period at work, and I got permission easily. I promptly contacted the airline to let them know Mom and I would be going. And after work, I stopped by a bookstore at the station to buy a guidebook on Miami. I headed home with my head full of dreams about the trip. When I arrived near the house, I noticed the lights were already on. John must have returned home already. I need to hurry with dinner, I thought. But when I opened the door, it wasn't John's shoes I saw in the entrance, but a familiar pair of women's shoes. Michelle, what do you think you're doing leaving the house empty until this late? Oh, mother-in-law, I didn't know you were here. This is not about whether I was here or not. It's time for John to come home. Normally, you would be preparing dinner and a bath to welcome your husband home. Don't you have any sense of your responsibilities as a wife? My mother-in-law lives nearby and has a spare key that John gave her. I understand she's lonely since her husband passed away, but her unannounced visits and assumption of making herself at home do not sit well with me. Moreover, my mother-in-law subscribes to the old-fashioned notion that a wife should serve her husband's family, and she doesn't seem to like the fact that I work. Each time we meet, she nags or throws snide comments my way, so I find it hard to warm up to her. Well, what's with the sour face? And that bag? Did you take a detour instead of coming straight home? What a useless wife. Show me what you bought. What are you doing? Stop it. Ignoring my protest, my mother-in-law snatched the bag with the guidebook in it. What's this? Are you guys going to Miami? How extravagant. No, this is a prize I won. I'm giving it as a gift to my mother. Well, nobody told me about this. As my mother-in-law and I were arguing, John arrived home. I'm home. What's going on here? Welcome home, John. I hear that Michelle won a trip to Miami in a lottery. How standoffish of you to give it to Michelle's parents without any discussion. I would have loved to go. A trip? To Miami? I wasn't informed either. I thought I'd present this to my parents this time. How many people can go on this trip? It's for 2 people. Well, you should have told me beforehand. I would have loved to go as well. Why are you deciding things on your own? I also considered going with just the 2 of us, but this time I wanted to gift it to my mother. What are you misunderstanding here? This time, I'm going with Mom, and you're staying home. My husband cut off my words and started saying outrageous things. No way! I won this. I'm going to give it as a gift to my mother. We can do that another time, right? Since Mom wants to go, try to understand. What are you talking about? You just went on a trip with your mother not too long ago. What's wrong with going on a trip with my own money? Anyways, this time, Mom and I are going. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce. When I heard the word divorce, which my husband brought up like a trump card, I felt my feelings for him completely cooling off. Fine. Do what you want. I decided to get back at them and backed off. My husband and mother-in-law, ignorant of such a thing, looked triumphant. You should understand. You should have done that from the beginning. Ignoring their sneering and arbitrary words, I was contemplating how to get back at my husband and mother-in-law. The next day, I reported the situation to my parents. My mother, who was really looking forward to it, seemed disappointed, but she showed understanding, saying, I see. If that's the case, it can't be helped. It's better than causing a rift between the 2 of you, so don't worry. Feeling sorry for my mother, I decided to make up for this situation. After that, I called the airline during my lunch break and informed them that I'd like to change the trip to Miami to my husband and mother-in-law. The call center operator looked troubled. We're sorry, but we can't accept changes to the reservation once it's been made. Moreover, the airline tickets are invalid if the winner isn't present. This was written in the documents we sent you. Please check. When I looked at the rules on the back of the air ticket and the winning notification carefully, it indeed said, only the winner has rights and transfer is not allowed. I explained the situation to the operator and told him that I would decline this prize. As for my husband and others, I decided not to inform them about this, and if they really want to go, they should pay the full amount on the day. So, that night, my husband, who came home from work, opened the conversation like this. Hey, Michelle, you did call the airline, right? Told them we're going to Miami with Mom? I made the call. Here, take a look. The winning documents and tickets. All the details are in there. Make sure you read it. What a hassle. I can get by without reading all that. Just take it, will you? I gave it to my husband knowing he doesn't read these things, but he, as expected, didn't read it and put it on the shelf. Try to enjoy this as a good deed to your mother-in-law, okay? I'll be more than happy to stay home. I can't wait to see the look on their faces on the day of the trip. John was staring at me, looking as if he'd been hit by a ton of bricks. And then the day of the trip arrived. John and his mother were held up at the airport. What? What's the meaning of this? Explain. As we have said, these tickets cannot be transferred. If the winner of the tickets is not present, they are void. This is stated in our policy, and anyone else will need to pay the full amount. John and his mother had booked some very fancy hotels, leaving their budget on the brink. And then, as John and his mother were trying to buy tickets at the counter, another disaster struck. I am very sorry, but there seems to be an error. Could you please use another method of payment other than this credit card? That can't be. I've been using it just fine until now. Why is this happening? I'm afraid we can't determine the issue here. Please check with your card company. John, having no other choice, paid with another credit card and then called me. Hey, what's going on? The tickets you gave me can't be used, and now my credit card's been declined. Did you read the back of the ticket? It clearly states that the tickets are void if the winner cannot be present. And I know nothing about your credit card issues. Not my card. Your credit card. Oh, I see. Well, I've suspended my card. I didn't see it in my wallet, so I suspected that you might have taken it. I'm glad it wasn't misused. That's not funny. You won't get off so easy when we get back. That's your own doing. What you did is stealing, you know. What a woman. I'm divorcing you. Get out. Sure. Just as I thought you'd say, as you wish, I'll agree to a divorce. The truth is, I was planning to go back to my parents' house before he told me to leave. I had already packed up using the paid leave I had taken for this trip. When I left the house, I took the passbook and the seal so he couldn't spend our savings, and informed the neighbors that we would be divorcing. When I checked the amount of our savings for property division in case of divorce, I found out that he had spent it several times over. I never recalled withdrawing the money, so it's clear that John was behind it. When cross-referencing with my daily blog post, the day the money was withdrawn coincided perfectly with when John and my mother-in-law were on vacation. I reported to my parents about being approached for a divorce by John, that he had taken my credit card, and he had gone on a trip with my mother-in-law using our joint savings. Upon hearing my story, my parents gradually grew stern. I can't believe John would do such a thing. I'm sorry. It's my fault for setting up the arranged date. My dad bowed his head in apology to me. He seemed quite angry with John. This is my responsibility. Leave the rest to me. Actually, my dad is a director at the parent company of John's company, and he occasionally conducts audits. This time, although someone else was supposed to go, my dad rearranged his schedule on short notice to audit John's company. There, he invited John's superior, who is an executive at the subsidiary, for a meal. Given that the position of director at the parent company is higher than that of the president of the subsidiary, John's superior was trying hard to appease my dad while breaking into a cold sweat. My dad told John's superior about me at the meal. Actually, my daughter is going to get divorced. It seems that there were troubles due to the husband's excessive attachment to his mother. I would have told her to endure it if it were just that, but it seems he also took out my daughter's credit card without her permission and even dipped into her savings. I couldn't tell her to get back together with him. By the way, the son-in-law, no, former son-in-law, I suppose. He's your subordinate, isn't he? How's his work attitude lately? I hear it's a busy period, but I haven't seen him around. Upon hearing my divorce story from my dad, John's superior, who had a bad feeling about it, decided to investigate John. John, being the son-in-law of the parent company's director, was a well-known fact in his company, and he was somewhat favored, so it would likely reveal quite a bit if scrutinized. I am arranging for a lawyer introduced by my dad to handle the divorce procedures and will soon be sending a written confirmation including the issue of alimony and property division. John told me that he wouldn't let it slide, but it seems that it won't slide for John and his mom after they return from Miami. And sometime after John and my mother-in-law returned from Miami, John came to visit my parents' house. Michelle, what's this certified mail all about? I'm broke. I can't afford to pay any alimony. And what's this property division? It's just a marital spat. There's no need to go this far. I apologize, so please come back. What are you saying? Have you even read what's in the certified mail? Your mom's daily mental abuse? Not to mention dipping into our savings and trying to use my credit card without my permission? There's no way we can make amends, right? Please don't say that. Since you left, it's been rough on both Mom and me. Really? For instance, are you getting cold stares from the neighborhood women? Or, has there been a big problem at work? John seemed to stiffen at my words. I guess I hit the mark. How did you? Who knows? Why do you think that is? If you think about what you've done, you might get it. There's no way I could get back together with you, and I'll have you pay what needs to be paid. Prepare yourself. Also, please go through the attorney from now on. If you continue to linger, I'll report it to the security company. When I mentioned the security company, John finally backed down and left dejectedly. Actually, everything that John came crying about was something that my dad and I had set up. Before returning to my parents' house, I visited the neighbors and told them I was kicked out of the house after my mother-in-law and husband stole the plane tickets I won in a lottery. I must say, my performance was incredibly convincing given my drama club experience from my student years. Apparently, ever since my husband and mother-in-law returned from their trip in Miami, they've been the subject of whispers and gossip in the neighborhood. My mother-in-law was embarrassed to find out from a local busybody that she was being avoided because she'd heard, "You took your daughter-in-law's winning travel tickets and kicked her out, didn't you? What happened next? You must tell me everything." From this, at my husband's company, my father had an investigation carried out. It turned out that my husband, who was the son-in-law of a department head in the parent company, was using his position to do whatever he wanted. He took time off during busy periods to travel with his mother-in-law, repeatedly showing up late or leaving early. Not only that, but he was also found to be embezzling company funds. Given the circumstances, he was fired, and the company declared to all its employees that it would no longer show preferential treatment to family members of those in the parent company. Thanks to the lawyer hired by my father, my divorce proceedings went smoothly and I officially divorced my husband. I was finally able to return to being single. The savings my husband had squandered were split evenly according to the amount before he began dipping into them, and I received a decent amount of compensation. The daily records I had kept in my blog were recognized as evidence of his emotional abuse. I felt very refreshed after getting my revenge on my husband and mother-in-law. I didn't want to just keep the compensation I received from my divorce, so I decided to splurge and enjoy myself. I scheduled a vacation to coincide with my father's company holiday, and I decided to go on the overseas trip I couldn't take before. I was unsure of where to go, but considering my mother's wishes, we decided to go to Miami. My parents and I planned our itinerary by looking through the guidebooks, planning to enjoy the crystal clear seas and coral reefs, do some shopping, and fully enjoy our first family vacation in a long time. Having saddened my parents with my divorce, I intend to make it up to them from now on. I can't think about remarriage right now, but if I find someone I truly want to be with, I might consider getting married again. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, I'm looking forward to my trip with my parents and cherishing this happiness.
My mom wants us to split if you can't give her a grandchild.
Alright, sure, but I'm pregnant though.
Huh?
I'm Anna, a housewife in her 30s. I live with my husband, a salaried employee. I met my husband when I was working at a food-related company. I fell for his occasional charming smile during our many business discussions, so I asked him out myself. When I asked him out, he said, "Sorry, I'm happy, but I have a girlfriend," and rejected me. But 1 month later, he asked me out saying, "I broke up with her. Can we start dating?" Apparently, he became conscious of me since I confessed to him, and his girlfriend, sensing something odd about his behavior, asked, "Are you into someone else?" When he nodded, she suggested they break up, and he agreed to end their relationship. I heard about it and felt guilty for ruining their relationship, but he told me,
"It wouldn't have lasted anyway, don't worry,"
with a smile. I was saved by him, and after dating for 3 years, we got married. At that time, he told me,
"I want to have children after we get married. Could you be a housewife to support me and our children?"
At that time, I was working at an exploitative company and didn't want to continue working there. So, as my husband suggested, I quit my job and chose to become a stay-at-home wife. I decided to support my husband. The transition from working as an employee to becoming a full-time housewife was surprisingly difficult and a continuous series of confusion, but that I didn't let bother me. Because our newlywed life was smooth sailing and I was always at the peak of happiness. Every day was fun and filled with joy. And not having any in-law issues was a big deal for me. My husband's parents' home is a 10-minute walk from our apartment. When I found out, I thought they might frequently visit and give me a hard time, but that fear was unfounded. My in-laws were very kind people, and they would come all the way to our house to teach me patiently and kindly even when I just had a little question. They never complained to me for not being able to conceive a child soon, and even said, "I love you more than any grandchild. I've always wanted a daughter because there are only men in our house except for me. Please let me love you like a real daughter from now on." I loved my mother-in-law for that, and I trusted my father-in-law, who was a man of few words but very reliable. But such warm treatment only lasted for the first few years. As years passed, the attitude of my in-laws changed little by little. My father-in-law became even quieter, and my mother-in-law had changed so much that I doubted if she had a double personality. No, this might be the real mother-in-law. To give you an idea of how much she changed, would it be easy to understand if I said she went from plus 100 to minus 100? At this point, my mother-in-law had become rather tough on me. Because we live nearby, she frequently pops by our house, and when my husband isn't around, she nags at me. Over and over, she pressures me to have a child soon, saying, "I want to see my grandchild already, and that's your duty as a wife." Not too long ago, she was telling me that children are gifts from heaven, and that they come naturally when the time is right, so there's no need to rush. Moreover, my mother-in-law compares us to other families, saying, "I heard the family next door just had a baby, and the lady next door is pregnant too." This has added even more pressure on me. However, no matter how much my mother-in-law pushes me to have a child, it doesn't matter if my husband isn't on board. At the beginning of our marriage, my husband did say he wanted kids, but about a year after we got married, he seemed to lose interest altogether. Even when I tried to initiate, he would turn me away, saying, "I'm tired, let's do it some other day," or "You're bothering me, I'm trying to play my game." Even when I explain this to my mother-in-law, she doesn't seem to understand or empathize, and she continues to pressure me about having a child, causing my stress level to build up day by day. Feeling overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's constant nagging, I confided in my husband about how hard it's been getting pressured to have kids. Then my husband, although a bit begrudgingly, said, "I don't see the need to rush, but I agreed to make more effort to have a child together." So we both put in the effort, but no matter how long we waited, I never became pregnant. Even throughout this time, my mother-in-law kept accusing me of not putting in enough effort, and even went as far as to spare my husband from any blame. I even started to suspect that the stress from my mother-in-law was affecting my ability to conceive. Unable to withstand the pressure from my mother-in-law anymore, my husband and I finally decided to seek fertility treatments. Just when I thought I could finally breathe a sigh of relief, a new problem arose concerning my husband. Ever since we started fertility treatments, he's been acting cold towards me. He'd come home from work and immediately go into his room to play video games, often ignoring me when I try to talk to him. That alone would have been bearable, but things took a turn for the worse when he started getting angry about me for spending a little money on sewing materials, my hobby. On stressful days from work, he'd take out his frustration out on me. Whenever I tried to argue back, he'd quickly lose his temper and lash out at me, repeating over and over again, "Who do you think is providing for you? You're just a freeloader," and continued to behave selfishly. Even when I remind him that I only quit my job because you wanted me to, he doesn't seem to listen. One day, amidst all the ongoing chaos, my husband, who should have been off to work, was at home playing video games. When I asked, "Aren't you going to work?" he responded, "I quit." Apparently, my husband quit his job without even discussing it with me. Shocked, I asked him why he quit, then he snapped, saying, "Get out of my business," and got angry. Frustrated by his uncooperative attitude, I couldn't help but accept the fact that what's done was done. I wasn't panicking about our finances, as I thought we could live off of unemployment benefits and our savings. However, it became stressful when I noticed that my husband wasn't interested in finding another job. With his job gone, my husband started staying home all day. I wished he would go out more, but his hobby was gaming. Aside from the occasional trip to the nearby convenience store for cigarettes, he was all day at home playing his video games. Compared to when he was employed, the time we spent together dramatically increased. If this was back in the days when we had first started dating, I might have perceived this as a good thing, having more time for intimacy, but not anymore. The amount of time spent together with my husband, who, like my mother-in-law, went from being a plus 100 to a minus 100, only meant more marital disputes. Gradually, we realized that even just talking to each other was becoming stressful, leading to less and less conversation. I began to wonder, what's the point of continuing this marriage? I started feeling the limits of our current lifestyle and started thinking about ways to break free from it. One day, fed up with my husband wasting his time gaming at home, I finally lost my patience and snapped, "You're not a child, stop playing games all the time, find a job already." In response, my husband said, "Speaking of which, my mom told me to divorce you if you can't give her a grandchild." At that moment, I felt grateful to my mother-in-law. Who would have thought she'd assist me in this way? Ironically, I was pregnant at that time. I had confirmed it with a test earlier that day and was planning to break the news that night. But I guess it was right not to do so. This way, I could distance myself from both my mother-in-law and husband. I responded, "Alright, got it. Here's the divorce papers," and I pulled out the already filled divorce papers from my drawer and handed them to him. My husband, who was not expecting me to agree to a divorce, let alone pull out filled divorce papers, froze in surprise when he saw them and blurted, "What?" His usual condescending attitude was nowhere to be found. He was completely dumbfounded. While he seemed to want to say something, he was so convinced that he must follow his mom's advice that he signed the divorce papers without much hesitation. During all this, he kept glancing at me to gauge my reaction. After filling out the divorce papers, we agreed to meet later to discuss matters like asset division. However, we had barely any assets to worry about. My husband, in fact, was known for spending a lot on his hobbies. Apart from gaming at home, he seemed to have poured quite a bit of money into gaming arcades. He used to complain about my spending habits, but in reality, he was the one who was reckless with money. The concept of saving was alien to him. My husband, who hadn't saved a penny since his bachelor days, continued this habit after marriage. Consequently, we had accumulated no savings or assets during our marriage. Realizing that we had no property to divide, I thought that our discussions were over. However, my husband insisted that we weren't done yet and pointed out a certain bank book saying, "We still have our savings, right?" Indeed, that account had a substantial amount of savings, and my husband suggested that we divide it. But that savings account was not subject to property division. "This is the money I saved before we got married, so it doesn't count in the property division," I explained. My husband's face grew rapidly pale upon hearing this. Even so, he blurted out, "Oh right, this condo should be subject to property division, right? After all, I lived here too." With a cruel smile, I laid out the harsh truth. "Unfortunately, the condo is under my name, so you have no right to it. Besides, I've already put it up for sale, so you can't live here anymore. You should move out as soon as possible to avoid any inconvenience," I told him. I had been saving up for a larger home in the future, predicting that the condo would become too small. Before marrying my husband, I enjoyed saving money, and even as a salaried employee, I had managed to accumulate a significant amount of savings. With those savings, I had even bought this condo during my single years, so I did have some wealth to my name. With the funds from selling the condo, I could even build a decent house downtown. Of course, all those assets belonged to my pre-marriage life and were not subject to this property division. My husband seems unaware of this, though. He must have thought he would get half my assets, but how unfortunate for him. Upon learning that he wouldn't be part of the property division, my husband was in a state of shock. We continued to talk, but he couldn't shake off his daze. As there was nothing more to discuss, the conversation ended quickly. We then submitted the divorce papers to the authorities. Our divorce was finalized without any trouble. A few months later, I moved back to my parents' house and, with their support, safely gave birth to a baby. It was a healthy baby boy. I named him Richard, a strong name with ambition. Now, I'm spending every day fulfilling my life with my beloved child and parents. Of course I haven't told my ex-husband. I'm sure if he found out, my former mother-in-law would storm in demanding, "Give me my grandchild." Meanwhile, after being ousted from the condo, my ex-husband returned to his parents' home. However, he was apparently so shocked by how quickly they accepted our divorce that he became turned into a social recluse. I've heard that even when he rarely goes out, his appearance is so suspicious that he's frequently stopped and questioned by the police. How pitiful he is. I heard later on that the reason my ex-husband quit his job was due to strained relationships at work. Apparently, he was even rude at work and especially disliked by female colleagues. He eventually got ignored by everyone. Unable to bear such a situation, he abruptly quit his job one day. Perhaps he's always been this way. He only acted kind in front of me. What a wolf in sheep's clothing. 3 years later, I'm now working as the manager of a craft store. When I became a regular at a local craft store, the owner approached me. "I'm getting old and thinking about retiring. If you're okay with it, could you take over the store, Anna?" she proposed. At that time, my parents were very supportive with childcare, so I had a lot of free time. I was considering getting a job again. And if I declined, this store would disappear. That would be inconvenient for many regular customers. So, with these thoughts, I decided to take over the store. Today, as I was serving occasional regular customers, a pair of unexpected guests paid me a visit. Yes, those unexpected guests were none other than my former mother-in-law and ex-husband. "Well, this is quite a nice shop for you, isn't it?" "Sure, Mom. Look, this fabric seems like it would suit you." Fed up with their transparent flattery, I asked, "So, what brings you here?" Then my former mother-in-law comes out with something unintelligible. "Give me my grandchild back." Apparently, she had somehow learned that I had given birth and was intending to make my child the heir to their family home. "When I brought up divorce, you were already pregnant. Why did you keep quiet? If I'd known, I wouldn't have divorced you." My ex-husband started accusing me. Obviously, I wanted the divorce. If you knew I was pregnant, you would have done anything to prevent the divorce. I shot back at my ex-husband and former mother-in-law. Then my former mother-in-law starts talking nonsense again. "So, are you going to give me my grandchild back or not? I want to live with my grandchild as soon as possible. You've had your time with him. You've been with him for 3 years. Now give him to me." Just as I was flabbergasted, my parents and my son Richard appeared and asked, "What's going on? Is there a problem?" It seems they had been alerted by a regular customer and came rushing over. Then, seeing Richard holding hands with my parents, my former mother-in-law exclaims, "Oh, how adorable! He looks just like my son when he was a child. Look, I'm your grandma." She tried to approach Richard. I tried to stop her, but it turned out I didn't have to. Richard proclaimed, "I only have one grandma," and clung to my mother. So, given the circumstances, perhaps it's best you leave, my mother suggested to my former mother-in-law. Never mind that, just hand over the kid to my mom. My ex-husband tried to forcefully snatch Richard away from my parents. I stepped in front of my ex-husband to protect Richard, but being much less physically imposing, I was easily brushed aside. Richard, watch out! There were just a few inches left before my ex-husband could grab Richard's arm. But then, my ex-husband flew in the air. What? Looking up, there was my father having just executed a perfect over-the-shoulder throw. Yes, my father had thrown my ex-husband at the very last moment. Turns out my father was a police officer and his judo skills were so good that he had competed in national championships in his student days. My ex-husband, who knew nothing of this, was unable to utter a word from the pain and could only look at my father with a pitiful expression. Well then, if you plan on causing any more trouble for my children or grandchild, we may have to involve the authorities. What will it be? My father asked, showing his police badge to my former mother-in-law. Seeing this, my former mother-in-law, her face pale, grabbed my ex-husband's hand and fled. Since then, I've had no idea what became of my former mother-in-law and ex-husband. Not that I want to know, of course. A few years later, inspired by my father, Richard started aiming to become a police officer himself. "When I grow up, I'm gonna be a cop too, and I'll protect you as well," he'd say, and is now focusing hard on his studies to become a police officer. Nowadays, he's practicing judo under my father's guidance, and I hear he's unmatched among his peers. As for me, I will continue watching over my beloved son as he grows.
My name's Lisa. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. Just recently, my boyfriend, Andrew, who had been assigned overseas for quite some time, finally returned to Japan. During our long-distance relationship for around 10 years, we faced several threats of breakups. But each time we managed to pull through by talking things out. My dream of getting married in my 20s didn't come true, but as long as I have him, age doesn't matter. I was satisfied.
So, we have to go to meet and greet to both our parents soon. Whose house should we visit first, yours or mine?
I was at a loss for words because he asked it during our date. Well, let's see. As I hesitated, he gave me a suspicious look.
Hey, you aren't about to say we aren't getting married after all, are you? I finally came back to Japan, you know.
No, it's not that, Andrew. I'm happy that you came back, but I added that word because there was a picture of his mother surfacing in my mind. The thought of marrying with him and having his mother in my life painted a dark cloud over our impending marriage. The first time I met with his mother was 10 years ago, when I was 25 years old. I happened to run into her while on a date with him. He was my coworker at the time.
Andrew, what are you doing here? Oh, it's a date. Nice to meet you. I'm Deborah, Andrew's mother.
Deborah was 47 years old then. I was taken aback when I saw her for the first time. She was surprisingly youthful and stunning, nothing like a typical woman in her mid-40s. Nice to meet you. I'm Lisa. I'm dating Andrew. As I nervously bowed my head, she scrutinized me from top to bottom. Her gaze clearly measured up the woman in front of her. My intuition was spot on. Because when he went to the restroom, she bluntly stated,
I knew Andrew had a girlfriend, but I thought you would be prettier. I didn't know he wasn't a sucker for looks. She sneered with malice as she spoke. Not just your face, but your body too. Well, if I say it nicely, you're voluptuous. But to be harsh, you're Oh, oops, my bad. I shouldn't say such things.
As if she felt any remorse. Well, yeah, I'm a bit on the curvy side. But what kind of first impression is that? He returned from the restroom when I was about to retort.
Oh, welcome back. I was just chatting with Lisa. We've become quite close, haven't we, Lisa?
As soon as he returned, she quickly put on a good mother's facade and smiled at me. Wow, what a drastic change. I was flabbergasted. After parting with her at the cafe, I asked him, "What kind of person is your mother? She's really beautiful."
Yeah, she was a local beauty in her younger days, and even won some beauty pageants. That's why she's still pretty focused on her appearance, and doesn't look too bad for her age, right?
Indeed, she might not look bad.
She seemed about 15 years younger than her age.
But inside, she was the worst. Yet I couldn't say that to him because he seemed a bit proud of his beautiful mother. But if I were to marry him, she would become my mother-in-law. To be honest, a feeling of unease crossed my mind then. 10 years have passed since then. Soon after that, he was given an overseas assignment. He headed to New York, so of course the wedding was put on hold. I hadn't seen her for a long time either. Yet.
Do you still feel uneasy about marrying me?
He asked me while I was lost in thought.
That's right. With a guy like me, even your dad, even Mr. CEO would feel uneasy.
Whoops, that's bad. I got caught up in the unpleasant memories of the past. It seems I've given him the wrong impression. It's nothing, really. I just had a case of pre-wedding jitters. I'll definitely marry you. So don't you worry, I said to him, trying to be as cheerful as possible. It doesn't matter who my mother-in-law will be. I'm not marrying her. And it's been 10 years. She must have mellowed out a bit. I convinced myself of it, but it was just a fleeting hope. The following weekend, I was heading to his house. Not for a wedding greeting, just to pick up something he had forgotten. Speaking of him, he forgot the movie tickets at home, even though we had a movie date. Thanks to that, we didn't have time for a leisurely lunch, but that's fine. Let's eat hot dogs and popcorn while watching the movie.
Ah, it looks like we'll make it just in time. Wait here, I'll be back in a minute.
He said this to me and rushed upstairs as soon as we arrived at his house.
What a noise! Is that you, Andrew?
Oh, you. Hearing his voice, Deborah came to the front door. Yes, hello. As I bowed my head slightly, she suddenly burst into laughter. Oh my, you're that girl from 10 years ago, the chubby piggy. Chubby piggy? Was she talking about me? Oh my, you're still together? Andrew has a peculiar taste, huh? I never thought he'd still be with the same woman. He should have upgraded to a younger woman. I was dumbfounded by her words, which she uttered with a faint smile on her face. What? Well, it's true, isn't it? Andrew's an elite, just back from New York. He must have tons of women chasing after him. You seem to have lost a bit of weight over the last decade, but on the other hand, the aging, right? You were in your 20s 10 years ago, so now you're in your 30s. Oh dear, you're turning into an old maid. I thought to myself, if I had aged over the last decade, surely she would have too. But her appearance hadn't changed one bit from 10 years ago. She was more of a witch than a beauty. Hey, it's Lisa, right? If you have any common sense, it wouldn't hurt to step back. You should really consider whether you're suitable for him or not. Seriously. Just then he came rushing down the stairs.
Sorry for making you wait. Took a while to find the tickets. Let's go, huh? What's up, Mom?
She responded with an innocent expression. Nothing, darling. You guys should hurry or you'll miss the movie.
Oh, right. Come on, Lisa, let's go.
Andrew grabbed my arm and led me out of the house. I couldn't say anything to her, nor could I say anything to him. I wondered how he would feel if he knew what his mother had said. I didn't want to upset him, but I knew something needed to change. I wouldn't be able to find happiness in marriage if his mother remained this way. But what should I do? I didn't know that. Time passed and Andrew came to my house to seek my parents' consent for our marriage. Of course, they said yes. My father seemed to prefer that I marry a man of his choosing, but he respected my decision. He asked us for one favor, but whether or not we fulfilled it was up to us.
Well, at least we've got your family's approval. Next is my family next weekend.
He relieved anxiety, stretched, and said that as soon as we left my house. Yeah, if I go to his house, Deborah will be there. I have to get her consent to marry. Will I be okay? Seeing my unease, he said,
It'll be okay. I'm with you.
Those words somewhat eased my anxiety. Then the following weekend arrived. I was so nervous.
What's up, Lisa? You look tense.
Seeing me take deep breaths, Andrew laughed.
I get it. I was super nervous when I had to go meet your family. Plus, I was meeting your dad, the big boss. But it'll be fine. My parents are both pretty laid back. You've met my mom before, right? You know what I mean.
Yes, I've met her, and that's precisely why I'm nervous. I screamed inside my head.
Hey, welcome. You must be Lisa. Nice to meet you. I'm Andrew's father.
Upon entering the house, his father kindly welcomed me. Well, hello there. Deborah emerged from behind him. I was taken aback by seeing her. Her makeup was intense. It was so heavy it looked as if she were about to head to a party. The area around her eyes was shimmering with glitter-infused eyeshadow. Her clothes, while not a party dress, seemed fitting for a trip to the theater. I realized this wasn't merely to welcome me, but a display of dominance, a kind of female one-upmanship. I quietly reassessed my own outfit. My clothes were fine. No runs in my stockings, and my accessories were not overly flashy. My blouse was freshly cleaned without a wrinkle. My hair was neatly done, and I had just reapplied my lipstick in the restroom at the station. And that's when she made a comment as she passed by me.
You've got lipstick on your teeth.
I quickly covered my mouth in a panic, but when I stealthily checked in the mirror when no one was looking, there was no lipstick on my teeth. She had lied just to enjoy my flustered reaction. I put my compact back in my bag and stared at my phone for a while. I knew that today's introduction would likely determine my fate. I thought so. Deborah, carrying a tray with tea, entered the living room with Andrew's father.
Dad, Mom, I'd like to introduce you to Lisa, the woman I want to marry. Though, Mom, you've met her before.
He started the conversation, and I bowed my head. My name is Lisa. I know I have much to learn, but I hope for your kind understanding. His father chuckled.
Well, no need to be so formal. If Andrew has chosen you, it's not our place to say otherwise. Our boy is far from perfect, so he might cause you some trouble. But we hope for your understanding, right, Deborah?
Caught off guard by the sudden shift in conversation, she hastily laughed. Yes. Nice to meet you, Lisa. Afterwards, we had a pleasant conversation over tea. I let out a sigh of relief. I thought that she might oppose the marriage, but it seemed that the introductions would conclude smoothly. Oh dear, look at the time, she remarked after a while, glancing at the clock on the wall. I'm sorry. I've been so flustered today that I haven't had time to prepare dinner. I'll order some sushi, so just wait a bit. Andrew, can you go to the sushi place with your dad and place an order for delivery?
What? Why do we need to go there? Can't we just call in the order?
Typically, when we order delivery, we just do it by phone call. But the sushi place we usually order from picks up the phone. It's faster if you just go there. Plus, I'd like you to pick up some beer and wine and some snacks from the grocery store. She practically forced Andrew and his father to rise from the couch. Come on. If we don't hurry, it'll get late. You two men go shopping together, okay? Pressured by her insistence, Andrew and his father left the house. Why she insisted on them going together became clear soon enough. As soon as they left, she let her kind mother facade drop. Oh, we've come to this, have we? Such a shameless woman. She crossed her legs on the couch with a thud. I've been telling you, a woman like you is not worthy of Andrew. You can't even withdraw yourself. You know, he could have a more beautiful, younger woman, and yet a woman like you who is still in the dark, trying to grab him and showing up for a marriage proposal. I listened. What exactly about me displeases you? Everything. Even though you're not beautiful, the idea itself of you trying to snatch Andrew from me is unbearable. I retaliated, but he likes the way I look. I don't think I'm a world-class beauty, but she scoffed at me. See, if he got a child, it would be my grandchild. I can't bear the thought of my grandchild not being adorable. I've produced a handsome son, but if his spouse is plain, the genes get diluted. Then she moved her face so close to me, even I could feel her breath. Understand, even if you marry Andrew,
I will never accept you as a daughter-in-law. I will find a way to separate you two, even after you're married. And then I'll find a younger and just as beautiful woman for him. Well, finding someone as beautiful as me might be difficult, though. I clenched my bag, which was placed next to me. Would you be satisfied if I left this place, ma'am? That's right. If you could just disappear forever, that would be great. Understood, I responded. I'll do as you wish, ma'am. That's right. That's what you should do. Just so you know, telling him or my husband about this won't do you any good. I'm always the virtuous wife and kind mother. No one will believe you. And then she stood up from the couch, looking down on me. Don't show me that ugly face ever again. It's a sight for sore eyes. Just then I heard the front door open. We're back. Suddenly she burst into tears. Wait. While I was in disarray, she appealed to the two men who just entered the living room. It's terrible. While you two were away, Lisa slandered me horribly. I don't think I can get along with her. What? I was dumbfounded. When did I slander her so horribly? Lisa said that she doesn't want to take care of us when we're old, that it would be better if we just went to heaven sooner, and that she'll mistreat us if we become senile. Oh, I can't say any more. You're scary. With that, she clung to my future father-in-law.
How could you say that, Lisa?
He said to me with a furrowed brow.
You seemed like a decent woman, but I didn't expect you to say such rough things.
No, you're wrong. I didn't say anything like that. In fact, I'm the one who was verbally abused. I tried to argue back, but she screamed through her tears. Liar! Do you think I'm that rude? Then show me the evidence.
That's right. I can't believe my wife would lie.
He seemed to side with her. Andrew tried to say something, but I held him back. If it's evidence you want, there's no proof that I verbally abused your wife, right?
Yes, that's true.
My cool rebuttal seemed to pressure him. If neither of us have any proof, it'll be nothing more than a he said, she said argument. However, unfortunately for you, I have evidence. What? Deborah stopped her fake tears and shouted in surprise. She must have never dreamt that I had proof. Since I came down here, I've been recording with my phone's recorder. I thought something like this might happen, because it's happened several times before, so I'm glad I was cautious.
Several times?
He seemed surprised by my words. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. I took my phone out of my bag and pressed the playback button on the voice recorder.
You're such a shameless woman. I will never accept you as my daughter-in-law. Disappear forever. Don't ever show me that filthy face again.
Her ugly rant echoed in the living room.
Stop it!
She lunged at me, but Andrew held her back.
Mom, stop it.
Andrew, this must be some kind of mistake. She is trying to frame me.
Mom, just stop.
Tears welled up in his eyes. He must have felt pitiful, knowing that his own mother was such a terrible person. I feel sorry for him, but there's no going back. Ever since I met her 10 years ago, I've been subjected to harsh verbal abuse. That's because she is beautiful and I'm just average in appearance. But no matter how beautiful the face, I don't want to think of a person with an ugly heart as my mother-in-law. So I won't marry Andrew. And as you wish, I won't visit ever again.
Well, wait, Lisa, I'm sorry for my wife. Let's talk again.
His father begged in a panic, but Andrew said,
It's over, Dad. Not just Lisa. I don't want to recognize this woman as my mother anymore. You probably don't want to live as a family with Mom anymore. So, as Lisa's father requested, I'll become a son-in-law in Lisa's family.
What? Deborah screamed.
Her father is the CEO of the company I'm working for. So, while she's my co-worker, she's also the boss's daughter. When I went to her house for a visit recently, her father asked me to marry into their family as an heir to his company. I was undecided, but I've just made up my mind. I'll take her last name and live as a part of their family.
But Andrew, what about this house?
Mom, you think I'm capable of taking over this house? You really think so?
Andrew was crying. His father, who was standing next to him, patted him on the shoulder and said,
"Well, if that's what you have decided, then I won't say a word. I'm sorry for making you make such a heartbreaking decision. I'll make sure Deborah doesn't cause any more trouble."
I interrupted. "Yes, I'd like to say I appreciate it, but..."
"Huh?"
The father looked up puzzled. It seemed he had only heard part of the earlier recording. Andrew heard it clearly and was devastated. It would be cruel to make Andrew listen again, but the truth must be revealed. I steeled myself and said, "I think you're going to be very busy from now on, sir. You're probably going to need things like a DNA test, among other things." Then I hit the playback button on my phone again.
"No, stop! Don't listen!"
Realizing what was about to be replayed, she desperately tried to stop me, but it was too late.
"I managed to give birth to a handsome boy using a handsome man's seed, but if his partner had a plain face, the DNA would be diluted."
As soon as he heard her voice coming from my phone, his face turned livid.
What? You?
I don't even want to remember the chaos that ensued. The father lunged at Deborah. Andrew and I desperately tried to stop him, and she was crying and screaming. The commotion was so great that the neighbors called the police. A few months later, Andrew and I got married. As he had declared, he married into my family and, at the same time, cut off all ties with his mother. However, he did not cut ties with his father, although the father-son relationship was denied by a DNA test. They still had a bond from living together as father and son for over 30 years. If we have a child in the future, we plan to show the child to him. It seems that his father and Deborah will be getting a divorce. She was sent back to her parents' house, but apparently she was treated so poorly there that she was kicked out, and now no one knows where she is. Well, knowing her, she'll probably keep bad-mouthing people wherever she goes and make herself unpopular. Deborah, who was able to maintain her beauty while living a luxurious life, now faces a tough future. I suspect her beauty will fade with the hardships, and she'll just become a witch. At least, that's what I think.